Hey guys, welcome back to Code with Harshit. In this video, we'll take a look at asynchronous programming in Python in just 10 minutes. We'll take a look at async and await keywords and how we can use them to make your code faster and quicker. We won't go much into complex theory, but real simple examples that help you understand asynchronous programming in Python. So let's begin. Alright, so let's start. Well, firstly, why do we even need asynchronous programming? You see, in Python, when we run the Python code, it does things one by one or line by line. If something takes time in a real application, like waiting for a website or a file or a database call or a network call, the whole program simply just waits. But asynchronous programming lets us do work while we are waiting. It's great for tasks like APIs, files, databases, and network calls. Let's first try to write a simple Python program and see how things actually work in a real Python program. To begin with, I'll simply first say import time. So we'll import the time module in Python and then we'll create a function. We'll name it download. Inside our function, first I'll simply print downloading. So let's just consider a scenario where we are trying to download a file, maybe through an API or some other external source. Now we'll say time.sleep for 3 seconds. So sleep is a functionality or a function that is provided by the time module in Python. After the sleep is done, we'll simply print done. Please know that when we say time.sleep for 3 seconds, the execution of the program halts or gets paused. So the program just pauses for 3 seconds and then starts its execution once those 3 seconds are done. After the 3 seconds are done, it will simply print done and the execution of the method will complete. Now let's try to call the download function that we just created. But instead of calling it once, I'll call it twice to give you a sense of what's really happening here. I'll save the program and I'll simply run it. Now, as you can see, we first see the downloading and done, and then we again see downloading and done. The total execution time that our program took was roughly around 6 seconds or slightly more. This is because Python did things one after the other. It first called the download function, printed downloading, the program execution stopped for 3 seconds, started and printed done. Once the first execution was completed, our program went on to call the method again and do the same process once again. That is why the whole execution took roughly around 6 seconds. This is how actual programs work if you are not using asynchronous programming. Alright, now let's try to see how we can write a similar kind of a program using asynchronous programming way and how that actually gives us an advantage over what we saw earlier. To start, I'll simply first import asyncio, which is a module in Python that gives us all the features that we need to implement asynchronous programming in our code. After that, I'll simply say def and the name of the method that I want to create. In this case, let's name the function as download file, which takes one parameter, let's say num. Note that I just used this keyword async when I defined my method. The async keyword here is actually used to create your function as an asynchronous method. To await anything inside an asynchronous method, we need to first declare our method as an asynchronous method, and for that we use the async keyword. After that, I'll simply first print a formatted string. And what are we gonna print inside the formatted string? We'll first say downloading, and let's say the variable that we just took in the parameter. After that, I'll simply then say await. I'll use the asyncio library that we just imported, and I'll say sleep for 3 seconds. This is similar to what we had seen in the first program. And after that, we'll say print done downloading file and number. So we have to create it as a formatted string. So now our function is actually complete. You see, to await any task inside a function, we need to first declare the function as an asynchronous one. And that is why we use the async keyword, and that lets us use the await keyword inside the function. After we have created this function, I'll go on to create another method, which again I'll declare as async. So we'll say async and we'll call it main. Inside our main function, I'll first say task1 and let's call it, or instead of doing this, actually let's just call the function that we just created. So I'll simply say download file number1, download file 2, and let's call it again for the third time, and let's pass 3. After I've written these 3 lines of code, I'll say await asyncio.gather. Now what is this gather and what does it even do? First I'll assign these values to a variable. So each of these gets assigned to a variable, and then I'll pass task1, task2, and task3. You see, asyncio.gather is actually indicating our Python program to start all these programs execution almost together, but wait for the completion of all of 3. So roughly the execution for all these 3 functions starts together, but our program waits for the completion of all 3. Now I'll simply say asyncio.run and I'll call the main function that we just created. This is how the whole asynchronous execution is actually starting. The asyncio.run is calling the main function, which is an asynchronous function, and is waiting for all 3 tasks to complete. Let's save our program and let's run it. You see, downloading file 1, 2, 3, it takes place in one go, and then we see done downloading file 1, 2, and 3 again takes place almost at the same time. So this is how asynchronous programming actually works. If we had not used asynchronous programming, this execution would have roughly taken around 9 seconds to complete. This is because we called this function 3 times and each execution would have taken 3 seconds for each execution. But using asynchronous programming, we completed the execution of the whole program in roughly 3 seconds. This is the advantage of using asynchronous programming in Python. Now that we are done with our program, I would like to take a minute and talk about a very common mistake that most of us make. It is regarding the difference between asynchronous and parallel execution. Most of us get confused and think that both of them are same, but let me tell you, they are not the same. In async, tasks don't truly run at the same exact time on different CPU cores. Instead, async works by quickly switching between tasks whenever one task is waiting. For example, waiting for a network call, a database call, or an API call. The task is being switched whenever one task is waiting. On the other hand, parallel execution really means doing multiple things at the same time using multiple CPU cores, which usually needs multiprocessing in Python. So in a short line, asynchronous is for waiting efficiently, while parallel is for doing things simultaneously on CPU. Let me give you a real life analogy. Async is like cooking, where you start boiling water, but then while the water is boiling, you shift to cut vegetables instead of just standing and waiting for your water to boil. On the other hand, parallel is like having 2 chefs cooking at the same time. That is the basic difference between parallel and asynchronous execution. That's it. In this video, we saw how we can declare an asynchronous function, how await tells Python, I am waiting here and you can do something else. Asyncio.gather lets you run tasks concurrently. It's great for tasks like API calls, network calls, database calls. But please note, asynchronous programming is not good when you are dealing with big calculations or heavy loops. For these kind of tasks, we generally use multiprocessing or other techniques, but not async. So if this video made sense and it helped you learn async await easily, hit like and subscribe to my channel for more such content on Code with Harshit. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you next time.